And even amid all of the political turbulence, immigration is, by every measure, an economic necessity. Even the strongest free market systems cannot thrive without a steady flow of labor, innovation, and demographic renewal. In advanced economies where birth rates are falling and populations are aging, immigrants are filling those gaps.
Sehr verehrte Damen und Herren, liebe Freundinnen und Freunde der Progress Foundation, ladies and gentlemen, a very warm welcome on behalf of my fellow trustees and myself to all of you joining us today at our 59th Economic Conference with the topic Managing the Challenge of Immigration. A special welcome goes to our two speakers, Kristie de Peña from the Niskanen Center in Washington, D.C., and Leon de Winter, the famous author and writer from the Netherlands. You had their CVs on your seat. And then also to Claudia Brühwiler from the University of St. Gallen, known by many of you from TV, and to our, how shall I say, well-tried and well-established discussion leader, Mark Dietli from the Market NZZ. Please give all of them a big hand. I'm also glad that our two American board members, John Aldock and Georg Vanberg, are with us today. The political developments in the US reinforce the relevance of the bridge-building functions of our foundation with roots in the US. The long distance between Washington or Durham, North Carolina, and Zurich, as well as their busy agenda, allows John and Georg not to participate in all our events, but this time they are here, and perhaps you have a chance to talk to them in the flying lunch after the panel discussion. Some of you might ask why we do not discuss the crazy first 100 days of the Trump administration. I will shortly come back on the situation in the US at the end of the conference, but the answer to the aforementioned question is simple and obvious. The preparation of our economic conferences is a long-term project. We fix the topic and the speakers 8 or 9 months, sometimes even 12 months ahead of time. This was also the case for today's conference. Und wegen dieser Langfristigkeit, meine Damen und Herren, suchen wir nach wichtigen Themen, die Dauerbrenner sind oder die in einer Weltregion, oft in den USA, aufkommen und in der Regel dann auf Europa überschwappen oder von denen wir aufgrund vieler Indizien glauben, dass sie in einem Jahr noch relevanter sein werden als im Moment des Entscheids. Die Migration ist ein Dauerbrenner, und zwar weltweit, wenn auch mit wechselnden Schwerpunkten in den USA, in Europa, in der Schweiz, auch in Asien und Afrika, wo oft Diktaturen, Kriege, Krankheiten oder Naturkatastrophen gewaltige Flüchtlingsströme auslösen. Sie ist seit Jahrzehnten eines der wichtigsten, emotionalsten, umstrittensten und schwierigsten Themen und wird es bleiben. Sie hat geholfen, Donald Trump ein zweites Mal ins Weiße Haus zu bringen, und sie hat in ganz Europa Parteien am rechten Rand des politischen Spektrums Auftrieb gegeben. Oder, wie The Economist formuliert, Migration ist vielleicht the present era's defining political issue. Wir wollen hier nicht die Kontroverse zwischen den Anhängern gänzlich offener und den Verteidigern fast ganz undurchlässiger Grenzen befeuern. Beide Positionen sind unrealistisch. Völlig offene Grenzen gibt es denn auch weltweit nirgends, ganz geschlossene nur in einigen totalitären Ländern. Ein Recht auf freie Einwanderung halte ich persönlich weder für ein Menschenrecht noch für einen Ausdruck von Liberalität, im Gegensatz zum Recht auf Auswanderung, das ein zentrales liberales Postulat ist. Da es zwischen den Polen Offenheit und Abschottung immer Formen irgendwie kontrollierter, wenn auch gelegentlich der Kontrolle entgleitender Einwanderung geben wird, sind andere Fragestellungen fruchtbarer. Sie rekurrieren nicht auf die Moral, außer im Fall von an Leib und Leben bedrohten Flüchtlingen, und sie könnten vielleicht die Polarisierung etwas aufbrechen. Erstens, welche Zuwanderung wollen wir? Das heißt, welche Eigenschaften suchen wir? Nicht nur beruflich, sondern auch mit Blick auf Wertvorstellungen, Kultur und Sprache. Und welche Eigenschaften suchen wir nicht? Ja, wollen wir sogar vermeiden, weil damit nach aller statistischen Wahrscheinlichkeit mehr Probleme als Nutzen für das Gastland verbunden sind. Zweitens, mit welchen Instrumenten wollen wir Einwanderung steuern? Wie können wir sicherstellen, dass die Anforderungen erfüllt werden? Drittens, was erwarten wir von den Migranten und was sind wir bereit zu leisten und was sind wir bereit zu tolerieren? Es geht also um Integration und Assimilation. Die Schweiz hat, wie viele Länder, ein Problem mit importierter Gewalt, vor allem durch echte oder angebliche Flüchtlinge. So sieht es jedenfalls Mario Fehr, der sozialdemokratische Sicherheitsdirektor des Kantons Zürich. Beispielsweise verübt die afghanische Bevölkerung im Kanton Zürich 10-mal mehr Gewaltdelikte und 9-mal mehr Sexualdelikte als der Durchschnitt der Bevölkerung. Und viertens, wie viel Diversität wollen wir, aber auch, wie viel Diversität verträgt eine Gesellschaft, nicht zuletzt unter dem Blickwinkel, dass sich das soziale und kulturelle Gewebe vieler Länder oft über Jahrhunderte gebildet hat. Gibt es hier Schwellen, die nicht überschritten werden sollten, weil irgendwann, ganz marxistisch bei mir, Quantität in Qualität kippt und dann soziales Kapital zerstört wird? Die letzten Fragen haben viel mit der Größe eines Landes, der Dichte und Homogenität der Besiedlung zu tun, aber auch mit der sozialen und geografischen Stabilität bzw. Mobilität. Daher dürften sich die amerikanische und die europäische Perspektive heute klar unterscheiden. Und angesichts der Komplexität, der Vielfalt des Themas haben wir bewusst auch eine Wissenschaftlerin und einen Romancier eingeladen. As usual, we start with the presentation in English, that is with Kristie de Peña. She will talk on America's integration edge, generational achievement of immigrant communities. Immediate thereafter talks Leon de Winter in German. His title is Vom Umgang mit Gefährdern in der offenen Gesellschaft. And then starts, without any break, the panel completely in English, perhaps with some traces of German. The panel should end ideally 1:45. Since I need some more time for my final remarks than normally, we have a surprise for you. And let me remind you that the speeches and the discussion are recorded and filmed and will be accessible on our website within a few days. And now, Kristie, the floor is all yours.
Good morning. Thank you for the warm welcome and the invitation to speak with you all today. It's a privilege to be here in this extremely beautiful city. My family and I have been enjoying gallivanting around Zurich and are looking forward to experiencing the rest of Switzerland in the coming days. I'm especially honored to join you today to engage on one of the most defining and divisive issues of our time. I want to start with a simple premise. Migration is not a question of if, it is a question of how. People have always moved in search of safety and opportunity, from natural disasters that forced the movement of people in Mesopotamia to the parents who sent their children across the Atlantic during World War II. Today, that movement is accelerating, and modern economies increasingly rely on it. The real debate isn't whether we need immigration policy. That question has long been answered by history, by economics, and by circumstance. The real challenge is building systems that are equipped for the world as it is today. Too often, the discussion about immigration policy gets hijacked by a false binary: open borders versus total restriction. The framing isn't just overly simplistic, it distracts us from the harder, more important work that is designing systems that uphold the rule of law, reflect our values, and advance our national interests. If done right, it's a generational advantage. That's why I've chosen to frame my remarks today around the idea that generational achievement is at the heart of America's integration edge. Because in all its complexity and many imperfections, the US has done something extraordinary. It has built the most successful engine of immigration integration in the modern world. Not flawlessly and not always fairly, and certainly not without setbacks and a very uncertain future. But better than most, and that achievement is real, it's worth defending, and it's worth replicating. I believe this moment demands cautious optimism. We know how to align immigration with economic goals. We know how to structure pathways that are flexible and enforceable. We know how to speak to public fears without surrendering to them. That knowledge should be our common ground, guiding us beyond a simplistic debate of open versus closed borders toward real solutions for the future. But first, let's take a step back and consider the broader landscape, which is undeniably fraught with challenges. The shifting global patterns of migration, divergent national responses, the resurgence of nativism, and the rise of misinformation. Most importantly, let's explore what lessons about assimilation we can learn from America to harness immigration as a driver of economic strength. In the past 5 years, global migration has surged to historic levels. Over 280 million people now live outside their home countries, and an additional 117 million people have been forcibly displaced, fleeing war, repression, violence, and changes to the climate. Migration routes are also growing more perilous. Nearly 9,000 migrants died alone in 2024, many crossing the Mediterranean or through the Darien Gap. As pressures mount, countries are charting radically different courses. Across Europe, anti-immigrant sentiment is hardening. Hungary has erected border fences and openly defied EU asylum rules. UK Prime Minister Starmer announced tighter British immigration rules, ending what he calls a squalid chapter and a failed experiment in open borders. Even in Switzerland, where nearly 1/3 of the permanent workforce is foreign-born, societal anxieties persist, and strict naturalization rules mean few immigrants ever become citizens. But the backlash isn't universal. Japan, long known for its closed-door approach, is undergoing a remarkable transformation. Facing a shrinking workforce and aging population, it's opening new pathways for foreign workers and reinforcing oversight to maintain social trust. These shifts reflect an important reality. Immigration, when managed thoughtfully, is not a liability, it is a lifeline. As the world fractures along political and cultural lines, one insidious constant cuts across borders: the rise of misinformation. In immigration debates from the US to Europe and beyond, misinformation is no longer incidental, it is a political weapon. Leaders distort facts and exploit fear, turning economic and social anxieties into scapegoating campaigns. Immigrants are no longer seen as people. They are cast as threats to identity, jobs, and safety. Just as we shouldn't romanticize immigrants as flawless heroes, we must also reject the impulse to fear them. Like anyone else, they are human, capable of struggle and success, imperfection and immense contribution, and they deserve to be understood in full and not reduced to political props. During the US presidential election, fabricated rumors that Haitian migrants were eating pets in Ohio spread like wildfire. While many dismissed the misinformation as absurd, distortions like these can carry serious institutional consequences. The Trump administration's recent move to brand the Tren de Aragua gang as a proxy of the Venezuelan government, despite scant evidence, transformed a criminal threat into a foreign invasion, justifying harsher foreign policy measures and a degradation of our democratic processes. This fear-driven politics hollows out trust in our institutions and leaves nations dangerously unprepared to confront the real economic headwinds of the 21st century. It ignores the mountain of evidence that immigrants, including those who are undocumented, are less likely to commit crimes than native-born citizens in the US across every jurisdiction and every type of offense. In the end, the danger isn't just misinformation itself, it's what it allows us to ignore. Nowhere is the complexity of today's immigration debate more evident than in the US. Immigration dominated our most recent presidential election. You may have heard something about that, where anxieties over border management and migration flows resurrected hardline policies and pushed restrictionist rhetoric back into political fashion. The Republican Party, with few notable exceptions, has embraced a nationalist platform that equates control with closure, championing near total shutdowns of legal migration, escalating the deportations of non-criminals and students, and undermining constitutional principles once considered foundational to American democracy. Driven by a far-right movement, the party has transformed immigration from a genuine policy challenge into a divisive front in the broader culture war, favoring provocative narratives designed more to inflame passions and win elections than to deliver meaningful reforms that could genuinely enhance security or restore lawful order. Too often, progressives have responded with equal dysfunction, defending a broken system in the name of opposing restrictionism, while neglecting the need for enforcement. Performative politics has eclipsed serious reform, ceding ground to the right, and failing voters who want both growth and control. The average American caught between these extremes is left with an immigration debate that fails to inform anyone. Amid this dysfunction, a notable inversion is quietly reshaping the politics of immigration. Historically, Democrats occupied the rhetorical high ground on immigration policy, championing inclusive policies and moral leadership. But rising concerns among working-class voters has prompted many Democrats to recalibrate, emphasizing instead strict border policies and dialing back expansive messaging on legalization. This shift reflects a sober recognition that progressive ideals must be balanced with institutional competence and economic reassurance. Conversely, pockets of conservative leadership are charting a more pragmatic course. In industries aligned with conservative constituencies, like construction, agriculture, hospitality, and healthcare, the demand for workers is colliding with the rigidity of federal immigration rules. In response, Republican governors and lawmakers in red states are beginning to advocate new legal pathways and expanded work visas. Motivated by necessity, these leaders see immigration not as a threat, but as an essential tool for economic vitality and demographic renewal, underscoring the idea that a secure and prosperous future requires not less immigration, but better immigration policy. Herein lies the root of my cautious optimism. These emerging cross-currents have softened traditional partisan lines and created new and unexpected alliances. Increasingly, the most serious conversations about reform are now being driven by economic pragmatism. And even amid all of the political turbulence, immigration is, by every measure, an economic necessity. Even the strongest free market systems cannot thrive without a steady flow of labor, innovation, and demographic renewal. In advanced economies where birth rates are falling and populations are aging, immigrants are filling those gaps. In the US, for example, immigrants account for nearly 20% of our healthcare workforce and nearly a third of physicians. In construction, agriculture, food service, and hospitality, industries struggling with acute labor shortages for the better part of this decade, immigrant workers are the backbone of production. While a small share of native workers may face wage pressures from increased competition with immigrants, these impacts are manageable with smart, targeted policy. Upskilling the native workforce is essential, but not enough. Even in a perfectly aligned labor market, the gap between available workers and job openings remains too large to fill without immigration. The US is aging, the birth rate is slowing, and more people are retiring. By 2030, 1 in 5 Americans will be 65 and older. By 2034, they will outnumber children under 18. The aging of baby boomers and lower birth rates mean more people will leave the workforce than enter it. Without immigrants, the US population would have shrunk over the past several years. Our Census Bureau projects that immigration will account for nearly 90% of US population growth by 2060. Countries that fail to maintain population stability, like Italy or South Korea, are already grappling with stagnation, shrinking labor forces, and fiscal strain. But immigration is not just about labor supply. It's also about dynamism. Immigrants are disproportionately responsible for founding new businesses. Over 44% of Fortune 500 companies were founded by immigrants or their children, companies like Tesla, Google, and Pfizer. Immigrants file patents at twice the rate of native-born Americans and are more likely to launch businesses and startups that create jobs and boost productivity. Immigrants also play a vital fiscal role. Decades of research show that over time they contribute more in taxes than they ever receive in public benefits. By working and paying into Social Security and Medicare, they help sustain programs increasingly strained by an aging native-born population. Even setting aside the political debate around the entry of roughly 5 million lower-skilled parolees under the Biden administration from Venezuela, Cuba, Haiti, and Nicaragua, the projected impact of those populations is substantial, estimated to contribute $1.2 trillion in federal revenue, reducing deficits by $900 billion, and adding $8.9 trillion to US GDP over the next decade. Oh, I have a slide. Oh, let's see. Oh, there's the first one. All right. Here we go. Read it quickly. Few nations demonstrate the upside of immigration more clearly than the US. What makes immigration to America truly exceptional is the unmatched combination of scale, diversity, and opportunity, anchored in a national identity that proudly embraces its immigrant roots as central to the American story. No other country integrates as many newcomers from as many places with as much long-term success as the US. America offers a clear and attainable path to permanent residency, full civic inclusion through birthright citizenship, and legal protections that remain rare elsewhere in the world. While many nations keep immigrants on the margins, the US has a track record of transforming them and their children into full participants in national life. Within a single generation, many achieve upward mobility that is still elusive in much of the world. In integrating immigrants, we are not bound by a simplistic choice between uncritical multiculturalism and rigid national preservation. Some reject assimilation as exclusionary or outdated. Others insist that it requires full conformity to narrow and often subjective notions of American identity. Both extremes miss the point and the evidence. By the second generation, nearly 3/4 of Americans consider the children of immigrants to be American, highlighting the remarkable speed with which immigrant families become American families, shifting perceptions decisively from them to us. The American model proves that assimilation and pluralism are not in conflict. In fact, the very success of our immigrant communities shows that integration thrives when immigrants are invited to contribute, adapt, and belong without being asked to erase who they are. It is entirely reasonable for natives to worry that poorly managed immigration systems will strain cohesion and opportunity. But concern is not opposition. When people see how immigration serves the national interest, how it fills labor shortages in their hospitals, revitalizes their towns with new businesses, and expands their tax bases, their support grows. Decades of research confirm that public attitudes shift when immigration is framed not as an act of charity, but as a source of shared prosperity. Perhaps most uniquely, America still offers something beyond economic opportunity. It offers a national narrative that immigrants can see themselves in. The American dream remains powerful precisely because it has never been exclusive. In a century defined by demographic decline and global competition, turning inward would not only betray our American ideals, it would erode our competitive edge. America's integration edge may be exceptional, but it offers lessons that extend far beyond our boundaries. While no nation can replicate another's history or identity, the principles behind these successes, clear pathways to belonging, alignment with economic opportunity, a unifying national narrative, and a clear set of rules and expectations can be adapted elsewhere. Other countries can reduce legal limbo and accelerate integration by building transparent and accessible systems for citizenship and civic participation. They can design immigration policies that respond to labor needs and invest in broad-based skills building, ensuring that immigrants and native workers are not just present, but are productive and empowered. And they can reshape public discourse to focus on immigration as a force for renewal and not rupture. At home, these lessons are more urgent than ever. The US is experiencing a moment of deep uncertainty and polarization on immigration, but ultimately the answer is not to abandon what has worked. It is to identify what hasn't and recommit to improving what has. If the world can harness the promise of intentional immigration policy, it won't divide us. It will define the strength of democracies for generations to come. Thank you, and I look forward to the discussion.